Hey everyone, this is Elenbaas from Nightlight Astrology. Happy Monday, everybody. Today we're going to take a look at all of the major astrological events for the week ahead. That is today, July 21st through the 27th. This week's astrology includes a new moon in the sign of Leo that is exactly opposite Pluto. That really is the big news of the week. We also have a Venus-Mars square that's taking place right around the nodes of the moon as well. So that'll be something that we unpack. But I'm going to give you a list of all of the transits of the week, tell you a little bit about how content will flow this week. We're going to take a look at each transit, give a little mini overview. I'm going to do some horoscopes at the end for the fixed signs, and I'm going to tell you what's on my altar this week. There will be horoscopes later in the week for all signs given the Sun-Pluto opposition at that start of the new moon. So you can anticipate that if your sign isn't covered in the angular houses today, which I always do on Mondays, that we'll get to later in the week. So anyway, on that note, before we get into it, as always, remember to like and subscribe. It is my hope to get to 100,000 subscribers on this channel within a year from now. I think it's a reasonable goal. I think we're probably somewhere between 16,000 and 17,000 subscribers away from that goal right now. I feel like we can get there in a year. So let's see if we can do it and help this channel out. If you watch it regularly, but you're not yet subscribed, give it a thumbs up, give it the subscribe. It really helps us. You can find transcripts of any of these daily talks on the website, which is nightlightastrology.com. Head over to Nightlight and check out under events. The live talks for the rest of this year, monthly webinars are now scheduled. These are all talks that are specific to each one covers a unique topic, and these are great for students of astrology to continue deepening your learning experience. In August, I'm doing a talk on the 7th house. That house is very popular in terms of being the house of love, relationships. We'll take an in-depth look at this house and how to read it in your chart. So that's August 14th. You can see the rest of the talks for the year are also listed. I hope to see you there. When you register, if you can't attend live, we send you the link to join the webinar on the day of the event in the evening. But if you can't make it, you always get the audio video replay recording. So that is there for you. All right, on that note, let's turn our attention to the real-time clock and let us take a look at all of this week's major transits. So we start the week here, July 21st on Monday, and we work our way all the way through Sunday, the 27th. The loudest astrology of the week forms around the new moon in Leo. So we'll get to that in a minute. But it's not until Wednesday that things really start cooking this week. We're going to have a little sun sextile to Uranus that will come through on Wednesday. I don't think this is the world's loudest transit. I'm not going to be spending any time covering it on the channel, so I'll say a little bit about it today. We'll come back to that in a minute. That sextile happens Wednesday, July 23rd. And really, more importantly, on the same day, we're going to see Venus in Gemini making a square to Mars in Virgo, while Venus is squared to the nodes of the moon. We're going to be spending some time dedicated to looking at that square between Venus and Mars, given that Venus is in the superior position and squaring the nodes of the moon. What might that mean? I think this makes the Venus-Mars contact a lot more powerful and interesting, given that the nodes are involved. So another major transit for the week is the Sun trining Saturn on the 24th. If we go forward one day to Thursday of this week, we're going to see that the Sun comes through the trine to Saturn. And of course, like back to back on the same day, will trine Neptune. So Sun in Leo, trining Saturn and Neptune in Aries, and then early morning, just after that, if we go forward just a little bit on the same day, the new moon will form in Leo. The new moon hits the trines to Saturn and Neptune, conjoins the Sun, and then early morning the next day, the 25th, the Sun will oppose Pluto. So we have within 24 hours a major lineup of astrological events. Let's refresh on this, which definitely this is the story of the week. Taking place Thursday to Friday, the 24th to 25th, the Sun trines Saturn. Let me actually put these banners up here. Let's do it again. Sun trines Saturn on the 24th. Sun trines Neptune from Leo to Aries Then the new moon in Leo forms as the moon itself goes through those trines. And then early morning, the 25th, the next day, the sun opposes Pluto. Effectively, what we're saying is that the new moon is opposite Pluto this week. A new moon opposite Pluto will be probably the most focused part of the content for the week ahead on the channel. I've got an episode with your 5 things to watch for given Sun Pluto opposition. We're going to do some horoscopes across the philosophical dyads of the houses with some interesting images and tarot card pulls for those. I'm really excited about that. I've been maybe it's Uranus and Gemini. I've been playing with new ways of doing some of my content. It's been really fun so far, and I hope you've been enjoying it too. But anyway, that's the story of the week. Let's review. Go back to Wednesday. We get a little sun sextile to Uranus, and then the Venus square to Mars, while Venus is also square the nodes of the moon. Then the 24th into the 25th is the big lineup. Sun in Leo, trines Saturn and Neptune in Aries. Then the new moon joins it in Leo, trining those planets in Aries, and then opposes Pluto at the same time at the start of the moon cycle. That is our astrology of the week. Let's go back and just review briefly each of these transits. To me, the sun's little sextile to Uranus that really begins tomorrow, Tuesday the 22nd, and then perfects into Wednesday the 23rd. That little sextile, especially given that the sun is now moving into an opposition with Pluto and that Uranus is trine to that Pluto, it helps. In a way, it's like, yes, there's going to be great oppositional tension between the sun and Pluto, but Uranus is a point of connection for both of them. And so I can't help but wonder what kind of Uranian impulses will find their way from maybe some form of tension into some harmony or synthesis by the end of this moon cycle. And again, I say that because although Sun and Pluto can represent real tensions and even power struggles or conflicts of will or purpose or what ideas are going to lead the way, whose authority in a situation is going to have the final say, the fact that both Pluto and the sun are harmoniously connected to Uranus suggests that maybe there's some third factor that can bring the opposing planets together. And that factor would be Uranian, meaning it would be unexpected, surprising, inventive, original. It would constitute some new or different way of thinking or doing things. So there's a subtle way in which Uranus is present this week that I don't think we should underestimate, even though the sextile is so brief and often not the world's biggest transit. In this case, the context matters. So let's watch for Uranus to start sparking change and ideas and breakthrough and the process of the new moon as early as tomorrow. You'll really notice it popping on Wednesday, and then we get that big new moon sequence. I'm going to be spending some dedicated time tomorrow looking at the Venus square to Mars, which is happening from Gemini to Virgo, but Venus is also square the nodes of the moon. So we're going to talk about that kind of evolutionary perspective, why this moment might be a little bit more karmically charged, what it means that these two planets are in Mercury's sign and Mercury has just turned retrograde in Leo. We're going to look at all of that. Suffice it to say, when Venus is in the superior position in a square to Mars, it's often a little easier. Venus and Mars can represent sexual tension, creative tension, the struggle or battle of the sexes, kind of classically, but also the sexual, erotic, creative tension that's present between Venus and Mars that can be constructive, even if there's a little, like, even though there might be some conflict involved. Creative conflict is still creative with these two planets especially. So Venus's square to Mars this week does suggest to me maybe some difficult conversations in relationships or some tensions in the workplace, some conflicting ideas about how something ought to be done, different ideas about how something should be managed or implemented, with an eye on the details this week, given that both of these planets are in Mercury's sign. I can't help but wonder if this isn't a conversation about managing something, how something ought to be done, ideally. Venus is going to be more playful in that dynamic and more open-minded and flexible and fluid and even experimental. Mars in Virgo, a little bit more of a stickler, a little bit easier for Mars in Virgo to get stuck in the right way, or this is the only way. The square to the nodes suggests that the conflict or the tensions present in our relationships this week have some karmic history behind them, and maybe there are certain conflicts that are coming to a head. That tracks with the new moon opposite Pluto that can also bring in a powerful energy of transformation, but also some elements of power struggle. So I would watch for that this week overall, given that Venus is also squaring Mars. Then we get into this new moon opposite Pluto, a lot of time dedicated to that this week. I won't say much other than it is not uncommon for cycles like this to both begin and then spread out with some of the same themes. Clashes of will, changes or transitions of people in power or leadership, the karma of dads, fathers, central figures of authority. The Sun-Pluto opposition is something that will spread out throughout an entire lunar cycle. So it's not just a couple of days in this case, but really the duration of the lunar cycle that takes us all the way into later August. On that note, I think that the personal versus collective tensions represented by Leo and Aquarius will also be felt. There is very likely going to be expressions of this in the collective that are very obvious. That's the case when you get a powerful new moon, exactly opposite Pluto and Aquarius, that whether it's leaders or sort of changes in leadership or conflicts around will and power and execution of sort of executive power, those kinds of things are very much featured around this new moon this week, but also again throughout the entirety of the upcoming cycle. So some dedicated time to that Wednesday of this week with some horoscopes as well later in the week that I hope will be useful for everybody. The sun opposite Pluto doesn't come in until the 24th or the 25th, Friday. So the busy part of this week is Wednesday through Friday. That's the Venus square to Mars with the nodes. That's the sun forming the trines and the new moon forming, and then the opposition to Pluto perfecting by Friday. Over the weekend, things will start to die down a bit, but those are powerful signatures that will likely create a wave of momentum carrying us through the weekend. So on that note, what I would like to do today is for the fixed signs, let's just take a look at what houses these are landing in and try to get a feel for what you might be noticing this week. Let me get this new moon here on the screen. And let's go back to Taurus as our first fixed sign. Now, what I do at the start of the week, if you're new to the channel, what I do is I take a look at the major transit of the week for whatever signs are receiving that transit in their angular houses. Those tend to be the most vivid, most expressive placements for the transits of the week. And so I cover that. But typically, as this week you'll see, we will do horoscopes for all of the 12 signs later in the week. This is just a way of touching on those angular houses that are getting hit by the transits of the week for the sign family that is receiving them. So anyway, fixed signs this week, you've got the new moon forming the opposition to Pluto, and we're going to focus on the location of the new moon and think of this cycle as involving transformation in that realm of your chart, given the oppositional tension to Pluto. But we're going to focus it on the placement of the new moon. So for Tauruses, that's your fourth house, place of home, family, property, father, parents, ancestral karma. This is about a new cycle beginning in the space of home and family or living environment. It's a powerful time of change in that arena for you, given this new moon with the transformative force of the Pluto opposition coming in. Maybe a little tension coming specifically from the career house, but nonetheless, the focus of the change is in the fourth house, home, family, roots. Going forward to Leo's, our next fixed sign, the oppositional tension comes from the house of relationships, but the focus is on the house of self, identity, health, body, and dharma. Who am I? What is natural to who I am? How am I evolving as an individual? What am I looking at in terms of my own body, my own health, my own need to individuate, evolve, grow, change personally as I'm doing that inner work of self-realization. A very self-development kind of focus for the month ahead, although the oppositional tension coming from Pluto in the house of relationships could be part of how that's happening. Now, for Scorpios, we're seeing this new moon taking place in Leo in your 10th house. That's the place of career. It's a place of reputation, civic, social standing, or involvement. If you're retired, this is the ongoing way in which you stay involved in the world, more or less. Then we also see the change implied in this public-facing part of your life from Pluto's oppositional tension in the 4th house of home and family. So there might be a dialogue right now between home or family concerns and public professional direction, or even changes happening with respect to responsibilities in the workplace, structures of power in the workplace, some changes within the professional environment in general that's taking place right now. How are you handling those? How are you meeting those? That's the question for Scorpios for not only this week, but the moon cycle ahead. And then finally, Aquarians, new moon forming in the house of interpersonal relationships. There's a Mercury retrograde there right now as well. So what are you being asked to consciously change or work on in the realm of relationships? How is that being necessitated by the power of Pluto in your 1st house, kind of asking you to continue evolving, transforming, and recreating yourself? Also by getting in touch with deeper Plutonian elements of your own psyche, that can create a kind of dialogue within the realm of relationships. That realm of relationships is the focus of this new moon and the Mercury retrograde. So what changes are happening within your relationships or within your dating life or within a marriage, or maybe even what is taking place in a partner's life? And how are those changes in a kind of conversation with ongoing issues of identity that Pluto in the 1st brings up? So these are the dynamics as I see them for the fixed signs this week. Again, later in the week, we're going to do a lot of coverage on this new moon opposite Pluto with more horoscopes to come. I have some really interesting horoscopes cooked up. In fact, at least I think so. Really kind of a different approach that I've taken to horoscopes this week. So I hope that you'll enjoy that. In the meantime, I want to show you what's on my altar this week. Let's turn the altar camera on. You can see right there, I have a little cup on my altar this week that is filled with lavender. Lavender is fragrant. It's a dried herb, but it's very nice and fragrant. One thing that I like to put on my altar is anything fragrant like incense or flowers, or in this case, like sort of aromatic dried herbs that smell really good. Anything sensual that connects the beauty of this world to the beauty of the transcendental world. I think sometimes in spirituality, we imagine that the spiritual reality is in some other world or dimension. It's very important that we, I guess, just kind of eliminate that way of thinking. We eliminate that way of thinking by constantly bridging the sensory experience of this world, the sensual embodied experience of this world, to that archetypal realm so that they're not separate. So for me, connecting things that smell nice, that taste good, that are beautiful, like flowers is another great one, to the altar reminds me that everything that's beautiful in this world is not somehow just a distortion. I think, again, the tendency to want to bypass this embodied world is sometimes very strong for us in spiritual practice, especially when we're dealing with things that are overwhelming in our day-to-day embodied life: parenting, jobs, money, health, self-esteem, psychological challenges. It's easy to, take up spiritual practices and then somehow they lead us away from this world, which on one level might be relieving, but on another level leaves us cut off. So the altar practice that brings beautiful things, flowers, smells, taste, touch, the 5 senses on the altar is always a good way to go. So some aromatic lavender this week, just as a way of connecting every beautiful thing I smell this week back to the gods. Whatever you do with an altar practice, be creative, have fun with it, You might be a part of a religious or spiritual tradition that has a very specific way of doing things, but you get the idea. To have fun with it is what's most important. All right, we'll end it there for now, and I hope you're having a great day. We'll see you again tomorrow. Bye, everyone.